Yeah, so thank you for that. I am Catherine Mattice, and yeah, this is our 15-year anniversary here at Civility Partners. And um, just to kind of share how I got started in doing what we do and share a little bit about what we do. So I was the director of HR for an organization that was small. It was a nonprofit, actually, 30 to 50 people. And we grew quite a bit. It was 30 when I started and came up to 50 over the time that I worked there. And I found myself working with another director who was a bully, I would say. He was an excessive micromanager, even if you didn't report to him, which I did not. He was my peer. He yelled, he made it clear if he didn't like you, that kind of stuff. And I was frustrated by it because I felt bullied, and also, as HR, dealing with all of the problems that this was all creating, and ended up doing all of my graduate research on the topic of workplace bullying. And so through that whole process of learning about workplace bullying and being sort of obsessed with it through grad school, I decided to start a consulting business focused on ending it. And so that's how Civility Partners started, and wrote my first book back off pretty quickly out of graduate school. Within a year, I wrote my first book, and it was just kind of everything rolling around in my head that I had learned in grad school. I felt compelled to put on paper. Don't read that book. It's old now. It's from 2009. We won't be selling or giving away free copies today. But yeah, so that's how I started. And kind of crazy. I mean, just because I know everyone here, Vision to Reality Foundation is, it's about building a business and realizing your dreams as a business owner and being an industry leader. So I'll just share kind of something outside of the concept of hiring, which was that nobody understood my business idea. Nobody else had read all of this academic research that I'd been reading from around the world. Nobody had heard of the phrase workplace bullying. And literally 100% of people I met and told about it would question that could even be a thing. And, people would say things like, well, why don't you be a leadership coach? Or you could, be a trainer in communication skills, and that could be your specialty. And I'm like, no, my specialty is solving this problem. And so despite being told no and not to do it over and over again, I just kept pursuing it. And here I am now, 15 years later, and turns out I was way ahead of the curve, because now we talk about respect at work all the time, and engagement and inclusivity. And I was talking about all that stuff 15 years ago. So don't let anybody talk you out of your ideas, is my unrelated tip, or my topic unrelated to this topic. So in terms of when you should have your first hire, there's no right answer. I can tell you my story, and then I could tell you kind of the HR point of view as well. So for me, I started working with a business coach. So back up, when I started Civility Partners, I had just gotten out of grad school. So with a master's degree, I was able to teach community college. So I was teaching community college sort of 30 hours a week, and then working on Civility Partners, and trying to get clients and doing what little client work I could get here and there. And then over time, the scales started to tip, and I was doing more and more with Civility Partners. The goal was never to be a college teacher. I was starting to really not like doing that. And really, so as the scales tipped, and I started Civility Partners, are doing that full time, and I let go of teaching, it was like, well, now what do? I've been able to fill my Civility Partners day with the things I knew to do, but now that I'm full time at Civility Partners, where do I go from here? So I immediately hired a business coach who helped me kind of figure out marketing, and she was really great. And I was just getting kind of busier and busier, and so then I started wondering about hiring someone. It was very scary because it's an expense, and it's a scary prospect to hire your first employee. what catapulted me to pull the trigger on hiring an employee was one of the ways I built my business was speaking at conferences, and I still do that now. And whenever I speak at a conference, I offer up, some item, some sort of marketing asset, email me and I'll send this self-assessment to you or whatever it is, checklist. And so I came back from speaking at a pretty big conference, and I just remember I counted them. I had like 87 emails to respond to from people in the audience who were looking for this asset. And it took me like 3 days to respond because I was doing other things too, and I wanted to craft a personal message to each and every person who had emailed me. And that was really the catalyst of like, I don't need to be doing this. Somebody else could absolutely be sending these emails. And so that was the trigger of like, okay, I need to do this. So my first hire was an intern from our local university here, San Diego State University. In California, you have to pay interns. So she wasn't working for free. I was paying her minimum wage. And she was getting her degree in marketing from San Diego State. And, I just put the call out there and hired a woman named Carla. And she was helping me with just kind of marketing those, I call them kind of grunt work tasks, doing those emails. And then she was starting to build things for me, and she was helping with my website. And so we were kind of working together on marketing. And then, bless us, we got so busy through all of that I ended up needing a second person to help me with the client work. So my second hire, also got from San Diego State. I had put a call out there in their business program for someone who was wanting to do kind of an HR internship and work with me as a consultant. And at that point, I was so busy that she started, and I was basically like, we always joke, she's still with me now, 7 years later. We always joke, that I was basically like, can you do this here? And I just like did not onboard her or train her. I broke all of the rules in the book around bringing somebody on, and things I would never advise clients to do now, but it was what it was. I was just crazy busy. So those are kind of my first two hires. And I would say, if you're trying to think of like, well, when's the right moment? As a small business, for me, both times it was out of necessity. It was like I had just gotten to a point where I wasn't going to be able to keep, like I could see that I was growing. I was getting clients, the marketing I was doing was working. And it was just like, I don't want to spend my time responding to emails. I want to be a consultant. So I need to have somebody to do that for me. And yeah, so that's kind of it. Another kind of tip I can think about around Civility Partners is for a long time, I've hired these kind of more low level people. Both of my first two hires were in college. They came to me looking for education and insight and being in the business world and that kind of a thing, versus hiring somebody who is at my level or closer in terms of my level of education and what we do. And we've been doing that a lot lately, hiring people who are smarter than me, know more about what we do than I do, or have different ways of doing things. And that's been pretty eye-opening. That I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you're going for the cheap labor who can do the grunt work for you, unless that's absolutely what you need. But just wanted to put a bug in your ear to kind of consider. There may be somebody who's more expensive because they're farther along in their career, but there's an ROI to that, right? Maybe they bring ideas that will bring you more business, or be able to help you upsell, or teach you some things, or coach you in some things. So, that's kind of my thoughts on that. I'll kind of just stop there and see if anybody has any questions at the moment. Happy to answer anything that you all have so far. Maybe somebody's thinking, I'd like to hire someone, but I'm not sure. I want to talk about it with the group. Would love to hear from you.
I can ask a question.
Yes, please,
Because
Winnie.
before Our company, we're a small accounting firm, and then we're thinking to hire a senior, more like a senior person can take on the work right away. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
do not need too much trainings and too much, like a guidance in the beginning. Of course, if you hire a senior person, just like you said, of course you need to paying a little bit a better rate, not
Yeah.
like from the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
So both sides have their pros and cons, of course, right? I mean, if you cultivate and train somebody from the beginning and they're loyal, they know you, they know the company, they know everything. But if you just hire out somebody, but normally if you are looking for a skill sets and somebody really in a more senior level in different sectors of your business,
Mm-hmm.
what is the most important things? Because you don't know this person, you don't have a relationship, you don't know the history of that person, but how you'll make that decision to hire the person you feel is the right fit for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so there's a really long answer. One is, for example, if you go on LinkedIn and you start sort of headhunting or you post your job on LinkedIn, either version of that's going to, you're going to end up with a pool of people you don't know. Um, so I would suggest going through a little bit of an audition phase, and that's something we do here at Civility Partners. So our process is that Rebecca, who I was just talking about, she finds people on LinkedIn, she posts the job, she works with our marketing team to get that out there. And then she's kind of sorting through different skill sets, and she calls and speaks to people and interviews them. And then if she likes them, then I meet with them. And from there, and she's doing more of the skill set interviews. And then I'm just kind of doing the like, do we like you? Do I like the way you present yourself? Would I put you in front of our clients? And then from there, what we've been doing is hiring people at a pretty low rate to work in the kind of in the back behind, so these are consultants who are ultimately going to be working with clients, but their first, 3 or 4 months with us is like, here's some stuff we're doing with the client. What would you do with it? Or what suggestions do you have? And it's like just understanding how they think and their skill set through that process. And you can emulate things like that too. Process could be that, like, if they need to be making PowerPoint slides, you could have them make you some slides and see um, how they do, and see if it's kind of something that you could mold from wherever they gave it to you. So that's all kind of like the technical stuff. In terms of culture fit, there isn't a really right answer. I have made many hiring mistakes at Civility Partners and previous in my HR career. Sometimes your gut feeling steers you wrong. So one answer is to have them meet with as many people as possible. Now, if you're a solopreneur, maybe you have them meet with some of your other friends in your group. Like, I'm assuming everybody here has a community of other solopreneurs and people that they seek advice from or commiserate with. So, you could say that to the person. Hey, I don't have a team. I'm a solopreneur. You're my first member. But in order to get an understanding of, you and who you are, I'd love for you to kind of meet some of my friends. Um, so that's one option. Another is if you can focus kind of on your branding. I know when you're kind of first starting out, you're obviously focused on the service and bringing money in. Um, so I want you to be thinking about, especially as you grow, it's better to do it from the beginning than try to do it later. You're building a brand. You have a personal brand. You have your company that you're starting or building has a brand. And generally, we see that brand as something that goes out to our potential clients, right? We want our potential clients to see our brand and know who we are and what we represent. But also consider that your brand should be speaking to all of the potential candidates out there on this planet. That you want to be using LinkedIn for your personal brand and your company brand. So the point of all of that is you'll attract people who are attracted to your brand. So, I'm never going to apply to a company whose brand is like stale and their color is navy blue and gray and the website language is, formal and that's not the kind of brand that I would want to work for. So I would not apply for a company like that. Versus, somebody else who likes that more formal kind of old school thing, right? So just always considering that you have a customer brand, but you also have an employer brand. And so that brand is speaking to the potentials out there. So that's one tip. Another one might be, hanging out with them. I mean, honestly, the culture fit in this scenario, if you're a smaller business, is like, does everybody get along with this person? Do you trust them? And the only way to do that sometimes is to give them a shot and hang out with them and see how it goes. So that's my answer. And Winnie says she loves the employer brand idea. Yeah, so those are some of my tips. I'm trying to think what else we do. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely hired people and thought, oh, never mind. And it happens. It happens. There's no right way. Actually, one other tip, which if you went to the workshop, I would imagine whoever was doing that also talked about this, is to talk about your core values. And if you're a solopreneur or small organization, you may not even have defined your company core values, and that's okay. You can use your own core values. And, core values are a way to say, we believe in the same things, we'll stand by the same things. So, for example, at Civility Partners, one of our core values is learn a lot. Because we're learning all the time. I'm constantly learning new things so that I can grow as the CEO. We're learning about the clients. It applies to a lot of things. But what that means is if somebody, for example, earlier last year, we had a consultant who never seemed to own her mistakes. She always had a reason why something happened. Sometimes she could be curt and kind of rough around the edges in her emails. And then when you would say something to her, it was like, oh, well, I was really stressed out, or just a lot of finger pointing and never, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. So she doesn't learn a lot, right? She's not willing to take those mistakes and learn about them. So that's an example of how she was not a culture fit. And of course, we're Civility Partners. So if you're not communicating with Civility, you automatically, don't fit anymore. But so, again, even if you don't have company core values, you could be thinking about your own. What are your 5 personal core values that you would need in an employee? And could it be, inclusivity, that they're hyper aware of inclusive language and they understand the importance of diversity and equity. And so if that's a core value, then you can ask about that in your interview with people. And you can do that with questions like, you could just say, I really value inclusivity and equity. I'm curious about your thoughts on that. That's one way. Or you could say, more of a behavior-based interview question where you could say something like, tell me about a time that somebody really disagreed with you, or that you noticed somebody was being excluded. What did you do? So you can come up with behaviors that match inclusivity and what does that look like if someone's being inclusive, and then you can ask people questions about it. And the key phrase is, tell me about a time this happened. And through their answer, you can kind of discern, oh, I like the way they handled that, or it sounds like they didn't really learn much from that, or I wouldn't have wanted them to handle it that way. And then you can kind of decide from there, this person matches my core values or not. So I'll say too, skills are something you can teach. It really is more about the core values and the personality. That's a lot harder to change. It's hard to change those old habits that people have. It's a lot easier to teach them a skill. Like, I need you to use Excel. I'm going to teach you how to do that, or take a class, versus I need you to stop blaming other people. It's hard to teach people that skill, right? Another question, what is the suggestion for an employer to hire multicultural background employees? That's another long long game answer. So going back to kind of the employer brand, I would recommend getting involved in various communities in your geographic area or online where there are multicultural, diverse people. And from there, then you build relationships with people. And then when you need to hire them, you've already got people to lean on to hire. So, for example, here in San Diego, where I live, we have a huge gay community. We have a whole set part of town is like known as that's the gay community. That's where the gay pride parade is. So I might, have a booth at the gay pride parade or sponsor an event at the LGBTQ center or give a speech like this one at the LGBTQ center. And then, we also have a huge Hispanic Mexican culture. We're right on the border of Mexico. So maybe I go to some community events, that I can locate there and hang out there. Maybe I know there's a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or People of Color Chamber of Commerce, so that's the thing, is to recognize that just because you're ready to hire, it doesn't mean that you should just put out a resume or put out a job posting and then hopefully the right person will come. That's one way to do it. But thinking about employer brand and the way communication and connectivity is now with the internet and the ability to have access to all sorts of events you would never have had access to if we didn't have the internet. Lean into that and spend some time building your brand that way and getting to know these other groups that you may want to hire. Does that answer your question, Winnie?
Yeah, I still have a long list of other questions.
Okay. Feel free to ask away. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did collect some before your speech, and because I
Okay.
collected from other business owners.
Okay.
So another one is how to, so because most people feel comfortable with their own cultures. That's just the human nature.
Right.
So for example, if a company, the owners with the majority of their employees, they're all, just say they're all East Indian or maybe
Okay.
all Black. But they know the service and the product that they are offering actually can benefit many people, not just for their own, like a culture background. So they wanted to reach out more, how to say, more of their customer base in other cultures. And of course, they wanted to hire those kind of people. And you already mentioned you needed to maybe get into those community, get to know some people, and just coming out from your own cocoon, right? I mean, basically get into other people's community, get to know them and see what they need. But how they overcome that culture misunderstanding sometimes. And I mean, between humans, and what we try to do is to view every single person as an individual. Like we're all humans, right?
Yes.
We want the most, I can say 99% we want the same things as
Yes.
a human being, right?
Yes.
So
100%.
forget about where you come from, what you look like, and but as an employee, so if they are looking for a job from their perspective, could you give some suggestions from the people they are from different cultures, but they are looking for a job maybe in the mainstream or maybe in a different culture group, but they just love that company. They love what they do, the product, what their skill sets is perfect for that.
Yeah. So you're asking kind of like if you're a job hunter.
Yeah, what they should like to prepare themselves.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I would say spend a lot of time on the company's website looking at their core values. I would go into LinkedIn and find the people who work there, get to know the types of things that they're posting about. What stories are they sharing? Is one person, for example, sharing or talking a lot about some specific group or some specific event or some activity. or some sort of association they're a part of. And, if you kind of do that one by one with the people you'd either be working with or as much as you can and have time for, that would be a way to start building rapport with those individuals when you start working there, or as you're interviewing, so whoever you're going to be interviewing with, definitely locate them on LinkedIn. Hopefully they have a good profile that will give you some information. You could even Google people, or see if you can find them in other venues, Instagram and what have you. So there's a lot of ways to get to know people as an individual before you join. And then the other thing is, this is hard advice, but I'm going to say it anyway. Everybody has to get over the uncomfortableness that comes with talking about a specific difference. Winnie and I are clearly different from different ethnic backgrounds and cultures. And it's not doing anybody any service by, if Winnie came on working here, that I'm kind of ignoring that fact, and vice versa. So I think as much as you can, obviously it can be touchy because you're not going to start on your first day like, so I see I'm the only white person here and there's everyone else is, whatever. But to start building rapport with people through those individual conversations, and even asking them when the time is right, questions about their own culture or experiences. And you can start those series of questions off with things like, tell me about your career. It doesn't have to be, tell me about, this holiday or whatever, but just to get to know people, and then you'll start to learn things about them. So that would be my answer. And just showing your enthusiasm for working there. Hopefully that answered your question, Winnie. I see another question from Rebecca in the chat. I recently heard of something called ghost hiring, where companies have job postings for positions that aren't real, but keep them to show that they're always growing. Oh, how often does ghost hiring happen? And is there a way to identify it as someone looking for work? You know what, Rebecca, I had not heard of that, but it totally makes sense that people would do that. How could you identify? I don't know if they just have ongoing posts. I mean, it could be, I guess I'm going to believe in the best in people. Hopefully they're not just lying. Like, we literally are not hiring at all, but we have a hiring freeze, but we're going to post this. Hopefully, at the very least, they're hoping to build their business or build their bench of potential candidates. So there are absolutely companies, especially large ones, that would leave postings up even if technically a position's filled, because they are growing, and they're maybe hoping to need 2 more people in that role within the next 6 months. And they understand that the best way to hire someone is not to do it in the last minute when they're too busy, right? The best time to hire someone is before you really need them, because then you can give them the proper onboarding and the proper training. And so that's my answer. It's not really answering your question, but I would think that those sort of ongoing posts are more about building a pool of candidates for when the time is right. Now, we do that. We need a bench of consultants, but we also are very clear that we are building a bench, and when we have a client for you, we will give it to you. We're also not, these aren't employees. We're hiring, contractors, but yeah, that's the deal. Let's see, give some tips for doing better jobs on job postings. Yes, this is something I'm very passionate about. My first tip is that your job description and your job posting serve 2 different purposes. Do not post your job description online. It's 2 different documents. They serve 2 different purposes. So think about it this way. When you are shopping for a car and you're looking online, nobody is posting the contract that you're looking, that's not what you're looking at when you're looking at pictures of cars. You're looking at pictures of cars. So same thing, you're not posting your contract or your job description online. You're posting a marketing document. The goal is to draw people to you. So that's tip number one. They serve different purposes. They could have similar content, but think of one as marketing and one as a kind of like a contract between you and the employee related to, and it's like, here's a list of things you must do in order to be paid, right? It is a contract. Secondly, make sure that your posting matches your brand. So, for example, if we're posting, we're being sort of silly in our job postings. We're, a little disruptive in our blog posts and things. So we're a little disruptive in our job descriptions. And we do list requirements, but again, the whole point is to draw people in. So don't list every last, 32 bullet points that they're going to be doing. List the top 5 or 8 main tasks that would draw the right kind of personality. And then you talk about the full job in the job interview. And in fact, you could show them the job description in the interview and talk through the bullets at that point. But they don't all belong on the job posting. Some other things is if you have the ability to run the job posting through, somebody who can help you discern if it's equitable. You don't want to be accidentally asking for only young people to apply, or just to give you an example, if I was hiring for sales, it might feel okay to say something like looking for an aggressive salesperson who, can win contracts and that sounds all fun and kind of in your face, disruptive. But aggressive is a word that a lot of females may not identify with. So maybe you don't want to use that word. I'm a great salesperson, but I'm not aggressive. I'm sweet and polite, and it works well for me, right? So that's an example of a way that you can accidentally be inequitable or be getting a certain type of group without realizing it. So those are kind of my top 3 tips.
Another question I have is recently many people use AIs and just reply. So as an employer, when you receive people sending the resumes and cover letters, you can identify that they are from AI. And do you just automatically, sort them to the trash, or you're still giving them some chances?
No, I would throw them to the trash especially because that's my brand, right? If you're looking for someone who's hyper efficient, who's going to sit in the back and make widgets, maybe that's okay for you, because they're thinking outside the box. If you're looking for a customer service person or, a manager type who's going to run, be interacting with people, then I would not want to hire someone who used AI. And I would want to feel like I'm special. They spent the time to craft a message to me or Civility Partners that's related to me and Civility Partners. And so we can talk a little bit more about that too, in terms of just understanding that this is a two-way street, right? So I think a lot of times people looking for a job can feel beholden to the employers and that it's really the employer's choice. And ultimately, yes, you can't force an employer to hire you. But also remember that you want to be looking for the right employer for you too. And so you are also, needing to discern if the employer meets your core values. And, if you believe that AI is the wave of the future and we shouldn't be talking to each other anymore, then use AI. That's your core value. That was an extreme example, but it's a two-way street. So, and considering the brand that they're putting out there, if you're applying for Civility Partners and you look at our website and see that we do a lot of, it's interpersonal skills ultimately is what we're accomplishing here, helping employers accomplish. AI would not work for me. Now we use AI to write blogs, but then somebody goes back through it and makes it Civility Partners sounding, so It doesn't mean you can't use it, but definitely take it from there and tweak it. And you want to, I mean, I know when I used to look for jobs before Civility Partners, one thing that I would do, I had a resume for every job I applied for, because what I would do is look at the job posting and then I would tweak my word choices to match the job postings word choices. So if I was, a manager, but the employer or the posting is using people leader, then I would change out manager and put in people leader, so that's a part of looking for a job. Now it's more time consuming, but you may be finding a better job that's more suited to you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I probably leave a little bit of space for other people to ask questions. Otherwise, all my questions.
I'm here.
Yeah, if they don't ask, I like to ask you, what is the most disaster or like the
Like a horror story.
Ready yeah, the horror story. Not mean they have to be your story, but
Right.
your client's story for hiring. And I just wanted to know that it's just like people can either laugh at it or
Yeah.
realize something. No, no, I'm not doing that, or something like that.
I have a couple. So back when I was internal HR doing recruiting and hiring for the company I worked for, a couple stories. They're not horror stories, but they're kind of funny. So one was so we didn't have clients coming into our office. And so, people wore sometimes sweatpants and a t-shirt. I mean, we weren't all in our pajamas, but we were pretty lax around clothes. And so I would tell people when I had my phone interview, because this was before Zoom, I would talk about the dress code and I would say, just so you know, we're dressed pretty casually, so definitely don't show up here in a suit. You don't need to get all dolled up. I'll be in, a blouse and jeans, and that was kind of my spiel. And this one woman showed up in sweatpants and a sweatshirt that was like super faded. It had a little paint on it. Like it wasn't even a nice set of, like, I might have been okay with it, except for that she looked like she had just kind of rolled out of bed. And I was like, oh, so you went real comfortable or something. I trying to joke with her. And she's like, well, you said, we don't have to dress up. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you still have to like impress me and help me understand that you care. So that was one. Um, Another one, which is not a great story in terms of hiring for equity, but also from an HR standpoint, it's a no-no. I used to ask, like I'd sit down at the interview table and be like, just, so tell me about you. Tell me a little bit about you, just to kind of kick the conversation off. And this one woman goes, well, I just got out of rehab a month ago and I'm really proud of myself. And, of course, equity, it doesn't mean she's not great for the job, but that one always kind of was like, whoa, I did not need to know that. That was not a good way to kick this off. So kind of an unfortunate story. Yeah, those are kind of my two horror stories. I don't know that I have a bunch of other. Actually, I have one other one. This is not my story. This is an old wives' tale from my days at San Diego State. So this is one of those like some other random person's story who I don't know that had been passed around, but it's a great lesson learned. Actually, I have two of those. One is the story that was going around graduate school when I was at SDSU was somebody was going to an interview, apparently somebody that I was in grad school with, perhaps, was driving to an interview and was running really late. And they're driving around the parking lot trying to find a spot. The interview's about to start. They're still in the parking lot. They can't find anything. They finally find a spot, and another car kind of starts to pull in, and this person flips off, whoever's trying to steal the spot. They park, they go upstairs. I'm here for the interview. And the receptionist says, well, hang on, they're not, your interview person isn't here yet. She'll give her a few minutes. And then eventually, the interviewer comes down the hall, and it was the person that the interviewee had flipped off. So that was the story around just like
Yeah.
making sure that you understand that the person you're interviewing with might be looking out the window and they might be able to see you. And so, spitting your gum in the bushes or any of those kinds of like inappropriate things, don't do that in the parking lot. Your interview starts the minute you leave your house, and you don't want to accidentally cut off the CEO where the job is that you're trying to get to. And kind of similar to that, there was a book that I was reading around treating everybody well. And there was a story in there about kind of similar. A person was applying to be like a chief operating officer or something at a company, and so thought very highly of themselves. And the receptionist was trying to make conversation with this person while they were waiting for the interview. And this person was pretty rude to the receptionist and very, pshaw, I'm better than you kind of an attitude. And then the CEO comes out and says, oh, this is my wife. And so the wife was the one sitting at the reception desk. So be nice to everyone because you never know.
Yeah, that's completely correct. My next question is regarding the bullying in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
because many cultures, I know especially Asian culture, when we came to a new country, and most of the time when we grew up, always got taught to be modest, right? To be respectful and don't talk back, if your supervisor or your boss saying something. And then how these kind of people they identified, sometimes maybe just their supervisor get agitated or really stressed, for a
Mm-hmm.
project, and they
Mm-hmm.
maybe raise their voice. They maybe just not too patient to get this done, or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's the supervisor or the boss is truly just a bully. I mean, how those people identified or know the difference, because even myself I was work like sometimes I go to visiting clients office, and
Mm-hmm.
some office the owner really treat their people so lousy, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even believe how those manager can work there, in the first
Yeah.
place. But maybe because of the culture barrier. And so I asked the manager, I said, how can you still work here when the boss
Mm-hmm.
talking to you this way, uh, yelling to you, swear, and saying a really and respectful, voice, and
Mm-hmm.
not only the voice and also the word. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so basically, the manager replied to me, said, "Oh, in my own country, and the supervisor or my boss, and they all like this way." And then basically we're just taking it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk back. We just
Mm-hmm.
do the work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but even I try to encourage him. I said, you can't take this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm already here for 3 years. I'm taking this almost every single week. So that kind of things, how the people they work there, they also want people to respect them, and then how they stand up and try to identify these kind of things and where they should go if they realize, I mean, in your town or in your uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, if you feel bullied, then you're being bullied. I mean, that's the short answer. If you feel, and it doesn't have to be, bullied is a big word. If you feel like you're being um, excluded, mistreated, being treated with incivility, whatever it is, if it doesn't make you feel good, then you got to go. You got to leave. That's number one. And that's what Civility Partners is all about. You have to feel good at work. And if you don't, it affects your whole life. You go home to your family or whomever, and you carry that stress from the day. Our basic instinctual need is to feel included and valued just as much as we need to eat. We have to feel included and valued. They're not different. These are two instinctual, equally important things. So if you're in an environment all the time where you can't eat, or if you're in an environment all the time where you're not being valued, then those are both very bad for you as just as a creature on this planet. In terms of kind of what's the difference between a frustrating supervisor and a bully, the answer is the behavior. So when somebody's engaging in bullying, they're engaging in three types of behaviors. The first type is aggressive communication, name calling, yelling, sending nasty emails, being rude all the time, interrupting people, rolling eyes, aggressive body language. The second type of behavior is humiliation. So calling out mistakes in public or talking badly about people, spreading gossip or rumors about them, leaving them out, picking on them. And then the third type of behavior is manipulation. So aggressive communication, humiliation, and manipulation. And manipulation is doing things like telling you did a horrible job, but not telling you why it was horrible or how to fix it. So I'm leaving you with no insight to fix it or be better, right? Manipulation could be punitive punishment. So going back to when I was in the bullying situation, the guy, if he did not like you and you were on his target list, if you were even a minute late, he wanted to know exactly where you were. And he always had this like look on his, where were you? But if he liked you, it didn't seem to really matter to him where you were. So kind of this punitive micromanagement. What else? Giving somebody so much work that they can't possibly complete it in time, or switching job tasks so often that you're kind of, getting whiplash. So those are the three buckets that I've noticed in my career. We're not really using a word like bullying unless those three things seem to be present. So, if it's just a difficult personality trait, like maybe you have a supervisor who sometimes yells, but for the most part, you like them and work with them and it's fine, then maybe you could have a conversation with them about the yelling when it happens. Hey, man, when you do that, it's real hard to recover from. It's distracting. After you yell at me, it takes me a while to kind of get back into work and it hurts my feelings, and you can have those conversations. But if somebody's bullying you and you have, tried to solve it in some way, shape, or form, and the organization isn't willing to help you solve it or kind of discounts it, then you got to go because they don't care about your psychological safety or your well-being at all. And I'll just add, kind of back to the culture thing and culture fit is that, it drives me bonkers if companies are saying things like we have a wellness program or, you can get 3 counseling sessions for free on us and we have a membership, to the gym in our office building and all that stuff. But meanwhile, bullying is happening. It's like real disconnected. So maybe back to your question, Winnie, about whether or not you fit in too as an employee, if you're sold on something and then you get there and you're like, I don't see, like, inclusivity was the core value, but I see gossip and nobody's doing anything about it. Well, that's exclusive. And now I can see maybe what the culture really is.
Yeah, that's really helps because many people don't even know those 3 signs you were talking about
Yeah.
because probably used to in their own cultures or maybe their own family, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people just not recognize it is not because of their bad or anything. They just take it, or the people really need that particular job. But I also wanted to encourage everyone, no matter your job seekers or somebody you're hiring and always treat people nice with respect. And I believe from they go long ways. And
Yes.
if
Absolutely.
there's a position really make you feel unhappy, you need to move on. You need to leave. And
Mm-hmm.
there's many places will treasure your knowledge and skills. And it's not like in the world only one place will fit anyone. Same as for employer. If somebody really not fit your culture, you need to let them go. Actually, I remember I read a book and it's Ray Dalio, and it's one of the person I really truly respect for his organization. And so basically, he said every time if the culture not fit somebody, they let them go. He
Mm-hmm.
always say, um, we wanted to see you grow, but the soil in our organization just not give you enough nutrition or waters or
I
sunshines to
like that.
let you blossom because you are a seed here, but our organization's soil, whatever
Isn't right for you.
chemistry,
I like that.
yeah, it's
Nice
just
little
not right.
metaphor.
Yeah, it's a wonderful metaphor. I really learned from it. It's
Hmm.
every single person is a seed. They can grow. They
Yeah.
can blossom to a beautiful flowers or a tree, and they just need to find the right soil or right
Yeah.
climates. And similar, like in the whole world, there are some planets just don't grow in our West Coast,
Yep.
right?
Right.
There
Right.
are some West Coast one just don't grow in the tropical weather.
Yeah.
So each of us, we just need the right environment and the soil
Yes.
to grow and to becoming better. Yeah, really, thank you very much. We're close to end of the hour. So Rebecca has a few closing remark and she need to make. And
Yeah.
I truly appreciate your time. No matter other people ask a question or not, I believe our conversation will benefit many other people
Yeah. Well,
from
thanks for
the
having me.
knowledge you share. Yeah.